So when it comes to the artificial lights, something we have to be aware of with the newer version of Lumion, they've basically changed the way light is handled in a way. There's a very fine balance between your artificial light and your natural light, which we're getting from our real skies, right? Basically, the issue is if your real skies is too powerful or like too overexposed, your artificial lights will look too dull, like it won't contribute anything to it. So if we go to photo mode and I take a look here, one of the things you'll see is our image isn't getting brighter, right? So we're throwing lights at it and it just doesn't look much brighter. It looks kind of dull. So what's happening is under real skies, we calibrated some settings before, but this was before we had artificial lights. So what we need to do is actually lower the sky brightness. That way we allow our artificial lights to kind of be in the same area, the same light band. That way they pop. So I'm going to lower the sky brightness and the sun intensity all the way down to 3. And I know this is a drastic change from before, but that was because we didn't have artificial lights. If you're doing like a natural light setup, you don't need to do this, but once you introduce artificial lights, it's important that you do this. Otherwise, you're going to run into this issue, right? Where lights aren't appearing correctly. Okay, this I'm going to increase a bit because we want this to be brighter, right? To help compensate for lowering this, right? So another thing you'll notice is, you know how we're getting all these weird blue spots? This is actually a glitch in the ray trace rendering engine. If you go over here to ray tracing and you uncheck fully ray traced glass, it's going to remove that. And if you're curious what this is, there's basically this setting will make anything that's curved, like curved glass here, look super realistic. I don't actually add a little bit more time to process that. But there seems to be a glitch where it affects your overall lighting. So that's what that's about. So as you can see now, our interior lights, look at these guys. They look so much brighter than before. And that's because we lowered our real skies, okay? So if you feel like they're not doing anything, it's probably because of that. So it might seem a little unintuitive, but that's the new version of ray tracing, right? So if we want, we can increase this a little bit more. And again, that's going to change this guy right over here. And then just to kind of summarize what these guys are doing, all these 3 settings, the sky brightness here, this is the amount of light that's coming from the sky. It's basically our skylight, and it's a softer, cooler tone than the actual sunlight. The sunlight is this direct sunlight. So that's what that is. It's actually taking the lighting information of the HDRI and throwing that around. The background brightness, this is the actual color of the image here. So if I were to lower that to nothing, that's why it looks so much lighter. So, you know, talking about earlier when we said the exterior needs to be overexposed, that's what this is going to do. And the sun intensity is this, like how powerful the direct sunlight is. And this will always be a little bit warmer than the sky brightness, okay? So that's what that is. So this, you know, it's looking a little bit better. We can definitely tone this down if we want. So let me go back to build mode. And let me just lower these just so they're a little better. Do somewhere around 1,000 nits. Let's check that out. Yeah, that's much better. And to increase the overall brightness, what we can do is actually use a exposure color correction to increase the brightness of the image. So check this out. If I go over to effects, color correction, and I just add this guy right here. Look at that. Look at how much brighter our image is. And our lights all look correct, right? We've got our nice, beautiful underglow here. We've got these can lights that are glowing. So you can see we've fixed our lighting here. So a couple little tricks here to make it, you know, work, but this is what we've got to do. So now that this is in a good spot, I can start criticizing our rendering a little bit more. So, you know, when we're working, you know, we're kind of like in progress mode and we think some settings will look good, but then once we actually see it, we notice not so great. One thing that's really bothering me is the floor should be a little shinier. Maybe the same thing with the cabinets. These light globes here I feel like are getting a little lost. And this little emissive panel here is driving me nuts. It's kind of taking my eye away from the rendering. So I'm just going to go back to build mode and let's start tweaking some settings. And again, I keep saying this is an iterative process. We're not going to get it right immediately. Once we render it out, things are going to look so different. So let's double click the floor. I want to increase the reflections. So I do that by lowering roughness. You see that? I'll bring that somewhere in there, and let's increase reflectivity. This again is like the brightness of the reflections. And what I want to do is actually use the clear coat. I know generally this is used for car paint. It's basically another like layer, but you can also use it to mimic like waxes and resins. So I'm going to add a little bit of that, just a little. And let's do the same thing with our cabinet. Let's lower the roughness. Let's raise the reflectivity, add a little bit of clear coat, and let's try and fix our globes here. So first thing we'll notice, we've got some weird artifacting going on here. This usually happens when a double-sided is enabled. So I'm going to turn that off. And this is actually one of the issues with the ray trace engine. Okay, so first thing I want to do, let's turn off double-sided. You see how it fixed that? Okay. I'm going to change the color and make it slightly darker, just so it doesn't get lost. Let's give it like a slight blue tinge. Yeah, that's good. Reflectivity, we don't want it to be too shiny. Increase that a bit. Increase our internal reflections a bit. And that looks good. Let's try and fix this guy right over here. I'm just going to make this a solid black pane. Lower this a little bit. Yeah, that way it's not sticking out as much. Perfect. Make this shine a little bit. Okay, perfect. All right, awesome. So now I'm going to fly back into photo mode.